Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the road to rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, take it to the next level and uplift others who are struggling through tough times. Now, as a reminder, you can hear this show anywhere you get your podcasts. If you happen to listen on Apple Podcasts, we invite you to leave a rate and review. Otherwise, feel free to give us some feedback on how we're doing by shooting us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com, and we'll give you a shout out in a future episode. All right, my special guest is a sought after speaker, counselor, and coach who helps professionals confront their limiting beliefs and achieve greater fulfillment in their lives. He's also the host of the podcast Host Rising, Hope Rising, Hope Rising, and an author. His second book, Your Butt is Too Big, that's spelled B-U-T, Your Butt is Too Big, was the #1 release in Christian counseling and Christian faith. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Maurice F. Martin to the show. Maurice, welcome. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. We're honored to have you here as well, man. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. So, if you don't mind, Maurice, can you start us off by giving us a glimpse into your journey that includes adversity, struggles that led to your inspiration to do the work you're doing today?
Sure, absolutely. I often tell people that sometimes in life, your story and your journey is far more adventurous than even you realized.
Mm-hmm.
And all that I mean by that is, in a lot of ways, I guess I thought I had an ordinary life and an ordinary upbringing. I knew that there were some hard moments.
Right.
But I don't think that I really understood how hard my upbringing was until later in life. I was in my
Mm-hmm.
20s and I started playing music, and
Mm-hmm.
I was a professional musician.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the pleasure of working with Emmy winners and Grammy winners and Rock and Roll Hall of Famers,
Mm-hmm.
and just had a chance to just really start to explore my music career. I
Right.
had licensing deals with VH1 and MTV and a couple other major places.
Yes.
But behind the scenes, I was a broken individual, depressed,
Mm-hmm.
anxious, just feeling lost. And
Mm-hmm.
by the time I got into my early 30s, I started to just feel suicidal, feel like I didn't want to be on Earth anymore. And I reached a moment that I think a lot of people reach in life where you decide, I'm going to have to decide, do I really want to live? And if I do, what does that mean? How do I really find peace and joy? And so since 2016, I've been on this journey of rediscovery, truly, not only really working on my own personal life, but then becoming a counselor, a coach, an author, and just trying to really help people grow from what they've been through in their lives so
Mm-hmm.
that they
Mm-hmm.
can find peace and authenticity.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, in that journey, and we're always a work in progress, right? We're always working on ourselves and so forth.
Mhm.
But it sounds like you have you've reached a point in your journey to where you can contribute and give back based on what you've learned and reflected on your own journey. And so I'm kind of setting it up to ask you, Maurice, um, in what you have worked with various clients and companies and other professionals, okay, has there been anything revealing um, to yourself or about yourself that's additional to what you've learned thus far in your journey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
The greatest thing I've learned is that it is a journey.
Yeah.
I have learned that healing is not a moment.
Hmm.
Healing is not just a destination. Healing is an ongoing process of getting to know the you that a higher power had in mind at
Yes.
the beginning of the journey, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I'm constantly learning who I am, learning what some of the pain maybe convinced me of that was wrong.
Right.
I'm constantly learning how much stronger I am than I believe, or
Right.
how much more peace I'm capable of having than I thought.
Yeah.
And so I think that the key for anybody who gets into the service industry is to always be so humble that you don't think you're a completed product.
Right.
I'm
Right.
I'm always healing and growing and maturing. And
Yeah.
as long as I keep that attitude, then every person I sit in front of, they teach me. They
Yes.
they they increase my capacity for learning and growth. And because of that, I always feel like being in purpose, it enhances your ability to live life in a greater way.
Yeah, no, it certainly does, Maurice. I completely agree. And with my background in talent development, I've always said, I am always learning, right?
Mm,
I'm a lifelong learner. So
that's it.
I can completely agree with you on that, my friend. And so uh have you in a couple more questions regarding your journey, and then I want to kind of move on to some of these concepts and ideals.
Mhm,
Um, in your journey, you talked about how you felt anxious, you didn't quite feel yourself, you were in a dark place, you were in pain
mhm,
on the inside, and a lot of people try to mask that with, I don't know, self-medicating or escape.
mhm.
You know, was that something that you sought out for, or did you, or was the work that escape?
It was all of the above for me.
Okay.
So for me, it honestly started. My first mask was passion. Now
Hmm.
that's going to be something that'll catch a couple people off guard. The
Hmm.
first mask was passion.
Mm,
So for many people at an early age, you learn that when life is off, you're going to need to find coping mechanisms, and
yeah.
most of us find coping mechanisms that get us through. So for me, I threw myself into music as a young kid, and I threw myself into sports and other things. And
Right.
I didn't realize that I was learning coping skills. I just thought I was enjoying life. But
Yes.
at some point, passion turns to obsession.
Hmm.
And so for me, I became a workaholic first, and then at parts in my 20s I was a sexaholic, and then eventually I had those alcoholic tendencies,
Yeah.
and now it was the drinks and getting high. It
Yeah.
was always something to escape being me, because being me didn't feel like enough.
Mm,
And I've worked with so many people in my life, and one of the mistakes that people often make is they'll say, well, look, I mean, yeah, I have a couple drinks, or yeah, I do this or that, but I'm successful and I make money and I'm right where I need to be. I don't think I have a problem. Well, that's called being a functional aholic, right?
yeah.
Whatever the
Yeah.
thing
That's
is
right.
before aholic. And
That's
so
right.
this it's not just about function,
No,
but
it's not.
it's about fulfillment. Are you empty and trying to pretend to be fulfilled by those accomplishments or by those things you turn to?
Right.
And if you are empty at the forefront of it, then it needs work and it needs improvement. And so for me, I realized, look, no drinks actually fill me. No work, no job, no number of sales, no whatever you call it, nothing makes me full, because I'm empty. And that was when I knew I needed a change, and that's the type of change I always try to help propel people to. And I'm not saying that that's easy, but I'm
Right.
saying that that's the worthwhile journey, in my opinion.
No, that is the worthwhile journey, and from what you've gone through, you see that other side, you know,
Mm.
and it sounds as if you work with people to help them see that other side. And along on that other side is not just the fact that there's hope and you don't need these self-medicating items to pacify or fulfill when they really don't fulfill,
Mhm.
but to truly realize their potential and know that they are enough and they are adequate and capable of achieving their dreams.
That's it. I'm looking at your background, Aubrey, and it's the sky and the clouds, and you realize your potential when you just look around at the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you look at the largest tree, it started in seed form.
Hmm.
When you look at the most beautiful flower, it started in seed form. It started as
Yes.
potential. And so
Yes.
what we have to understand is that sometimes we begin in a hardened state and we feel small. But
Hmm.
that does not mean we are limited to where we are in that moment. We can grow.
Right.
We just have to
Right.
make sure we're in an environment that nourishes us and
Yes.
replenishes us so that we can grow to become the people we were born to be.
Gotcha, gotcha. And speaking of those people that we were born to be, and getting to that point, right?
Mhm.
I know you've worked with a lot of people, but I'd love to know what are some of the common reasons or common things you have observed that people have have had in their lives that is the cause of that's holding them back from realizing their true potential. What is it that a lot of people are not just letting go to truly realize who they could be?
Honestly, I think that was a perfect setup. One of the things that I've learned is that people often go through moments that feel ordinary, that produce extraordinary results.
Yeah,
What I mean
yeah.
by that is that sometimes life will rock you, right? There's
Hmm.
trauma, there's
Hmm.
drama, there's moments of pain that hit you.
Yeah,
And when they hit you, they don't hit you like they would have hit everybody else. They freeze you in time.
right.
And we don't really live in a culture that teaches you how to heal from those moments or how to
Yeah,
deal with them, right?
right,
What
right.
what are we told in life? Just get over it.
Yep.
Just move past it, right?
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
what you learn is when you just get over a thing, what that usually means is you walk past it and pretend it's not there.
Hmm.
It grabs a hold of you, and then you end up carrying it around with you through life. And so
Hmm.
one of the keys is to understand, no, those moments that you thought hurt you, they really did.
Yeah.
And here's something and it was a recent kind of an aha moment that I had. I was thinking about the phrase, and we've heard this our entire lives. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Have you ever considered the fact that when you go through a life event and then you seem to get weaker and weaker, that the moment actually killed a part of you and you just didn't realize it?
Hmm.
That not all death is physical. Sometimes there
Right.
is emotional death that like takes away part of your personality or
Yeah.
reduces a part of your drive or
Yes.
your meaning in life. And
Yes.
so sometimes if you don't go back and allow that healing work to recalibrate you, refocus you, and revive you,
Yeah.
you end up being kind of like the walking dead and just living life without that pulse and that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. So, excuse me. It sounds like there's a combination of things, and
Mhm.
I wonder. I guess the ratio it would depend. It's a floating variable, but these types of things, right?
Mhm.
That we have in our lives that hold us back. I mean,
Mhm.
it is. I would imagine on one side there can be things that we we put on ourselves,
Mhm.
um, and like playing the victim, or
Mm.
not really having the mindset of being open-minded, self-aware, and those sorts of things that we
Mhm.
put on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then that can hold us back from realizing true potential and
Mhm.
growth and transformation.
Million percent.
Okay, there's also true legitimate traumas that we didn't ask to happen.
Mhm.
Okay, that happens in our lives. Is there any type of is there any type of connection between, let's say, the trauma that happened,
Mhm.
and at some point after processing through that trauma, having the proper counseling and everything, to try to be mindful not to put it on ourselves, defining who we are by that trauma, so that we can let go of that and can realize our potential? Can you speak to that? Is there a connection between the two where, if the trauma happens, fine, yeah, we have to, work with someone professional to process that, to
Mhm.
go through what you need to go through to fully process that, and then learn to release?
To me, there's 100% causation. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I think it's important for us to understand what trauma is.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, a traumatic moment is a jarring moment. It's a life event,
Hmm.
which after the moment happens, person's life is never the same again. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there are some big T traumas and some small T traumas.
Right.
Trauma can be getting let go from a job. Trauma can be something major, an assault, abuse. I mean, there are so many things that categorize as trauma.
Right.
Trauma can be that you thought you knew where you were going in life, and a bunch of things fell through, and COVID-19 happens, and all these things happen, and you lose finances. Trauma
Yeah.
is a major category, and I
Yeah.
don't think that most people realize that every human goes through traumatic events.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, to me, if you don't work to define moments on your own, they define you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
That's right.
what happens is, if I don't directly deal with something that goes on in my life, you lose somebody that you love, you lose a situation that meant a lot to you. Now you find yourself feeling lost or broken or stuck or whatever the remnants are
Yeah.
of that trauma.
Yeah.
What happens is, because I haven't dealt with it, it starts to deal with me.
That's
So
right.
that the sadness, the anger, the depression, whatever it is, it comes out in weird ways. It comes out sideways. It
Yeah.
comes out and it affects my relationships. It affects
Yes.
my character, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
defines me.
Yes.
Part of the process of seeing a coach, seeing a therapist, seeing a grief counselor, and working through those moments is, now we can give those events meaning on our own. We
Right.
can redefine what the moment means. Yes, it hurt me, and it also built me. Yes, it
Yes.
happened, but because of it, I can move forward in life. One of the examples that I've given many times, in 2016, my brother, he died. He drowned in
Mm.
an
Oh,
accident.
sorry.
It was my second brother who died in 2 years.
Mm.
And you want to talk about a traumatic part of life.
Yeah.
Now, the initial hit of it and the initial impact of it is, I'll never be the same. I'll never have joy again. I feel guilty for feeling joy or feeling peace.
Mhm. Mhm.
Today, I often say, I have more passion and more vigor for doing what I do in life, because
Yeah.
I realize how precious a breath is.
Yes.
Right? I have been able to redefine the trauma. Now, I understand that some people, they look at moments in their lives and they have a harder time doing that, and there's
Yeah.
more healing work and more forgiveness work.
Right. Right.
But at the end of the day, what you place your hands on, you can change. What you wrap your head around and your heart around, you can alter. What you pretend is not there will always alter you.
Mm. I hear that and I feel that
Mhm.
100%, man, 100%. In fact, as you were saying that, I mean, very profound. One one phrase came to my mind, and again, the talent development background,
Mhm.
um, a class that we teach for our executives called Crucial Conversations,
Mhm.
and talking about how to have crucial conversations for the purpose of mutual respect and trust, productivity, those sorts of things, right?
Mhm. Right.
One phrase that we always say is, if you don't talk it out, you will act it out.
That's it.
So whether you're acting it out or not, if you don't talk it out, you're going to act it out.
You
So
are.
oh, no doubt, man. So you've had some very, uh, very challenging events take place in your life,
Mhm.
and even those like early on in your 20s, with the music career. Um, while that is chugging along, and you're using your passion to the point of obsession, and you're in a dark place inside. Um, just thinking about, when you were at the brink, thinking that me existing on this earth um, no longer would really be so much better than me sitting here.
Mhm.
That's a deep, deep, dark place to be, man. And then fast
100%.
forward, losing two brothers in 2 years, again, very dark, very deep. I can't help but think and believe that, I mean, your strong faith played a big element, a big part in realizing, hey, this doesn't need to define me and who I am.
Yes, well, I often say that those tragedies were the real birthplace of my faith.
Mm,
I think in my teenage years, I had my grandmother's faith.
yeah.
In other words, I think I used to pray to my grandmother's God, my grandmother's higher power, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I didn't have a personal connection and personal relationship.
I see.
And when I went through tragedy,
Hmm.
it shifted something for me. I
Hmm.
realized, what if I'm here for a reason? And what if I'm not a mistake and I'm not an accident and there's something I'm meant to do with this life? And
Right.
I started to live as if it was true and it was real. And I
Hmm.
continue to carry myself that way. I
Hmm.
walk into rooms believing that I am the light in dark rooms. That I, because I've been in so much darkness, I learned how to see in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so now I often go into very dark circumstances and situations, and there is a faith that walks into the room with me that I'm here for a reason and I'm not here by myself or alone. And
Wow.
that is a catalyst.
That's a huge catalyst, man. I mean, because I mean that furthers, it's like iron sharpens iron, right?
That's it.
Faith strengthens faith.
Yes.
You having the faith, knowing that you're not alone, okay, that your God, your higher power is with you as you go down this rabbit hole of darkness and
Hmm.
depth and
Hmm.
despair.
Hmm.
Just knowing you have that uh, causes you to boldly go, you
Yes.
know, in that direction. That's fascinating, but makes all kinds of sense.
It's interesting, and I know that people, they listen with all kinds of different backgrounds and things,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I often about a part of the scripture from 20th Psalm, and this is all I'll say about it. It says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil."
right.
Right before that, it says, "He guides me along paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." It goes as if to say that God can actually guide you into dark places.
Yeah,
Well, why would that happen unless you were there to have an impact or make a difference or to be a light or to give a
yeah,
testimony, right? And
yes,
so when I
yes.
saw that, I said, okay, that's why I'm meant to do what I'm meant to do.
Hmm.
It's, if I can get better,
Hmm.
anyone can get better. I'm not special. I'm not unique. Now, sure, I bring a unique gift to the table just like you do and every one of the listeners do. But at
Right,
the end
right,
of the day, we're just people, and we're
right.
just saying yes to the adventure and the journey.
Makes a lot of sense. Saying yes to the adventure and the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's beautiful. And yeah, that definitely makes all kinds of sense. Um, so Maurice, um, when working with someone who has a hard time letting go of something, let's say a misfortune or an unfortunate event,
Mm-hmm.
and they use that to define who they are. We always talk about our story, right? People's stories,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And while I don't know, to me it seems like we have to strike a balance, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there may be, here's what I mean. There may be a negative event or a bad event that happened, to your point, as you said earlier, okay, to build me, not to break me,
Mm-hmm.
but to build me.
Mm-hmm.
That may happen and depends on how you look at it. So that event may have happened and it's part of who I am. It's part of my story, but it's not my story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that event to define who I am as far as my story. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so much more. I was someone much more before the event, and I'm someone much more after the event.
Absolutely.
Those are my beliefs. Okay. So so with that said, for some people who hold on to that, and to them, that is their story,
Mhm.
how do you work with someone who and help them realize the potential for pursuing their dreams when someone holds on to this unfortunate event thinking it defines who they are?
Honestly, one of the first things I tell people to do is to write their story down.
Okay.
So, in other words, I say, this is what I want you to do. And for anybody listening, look, this is free, but I do charge for this. Right?
You heard it right here, guys.
Right?
It's free, but so you
It's
better listen.
it's free today, right?
But he charges it, but it's free today.
It's free
All
right
right.
now. Here it is, right? Step number one, sit down, pencil and paper,
Hmm.
and write down the story you believe about your life.
Okay.
Give it a title,
Yeah.
right? Write
Hmm.
down 2 to 3 of the beautiful stories, the
Yeah.
beautiful events that have happened in your journey.
Yeah.
Then write down 1 to 2 of the things that were tough you've been through that you just couldn't write your story and leave out.
Right. Right.
Who are the main characters who are in your story? And write it all
Right.
down.
Right.
And when you sit down and you look at your story, you'll find themes that are there.
Hmm.
You'll find what are called limiting beliefs that are there, the limitations you believe. I feel
Yeah.
like I was set up for failure. I,
Hmm.
I I was born into a broken house and a broken family, and I've always been broke. You'll see
Right.
the themes. And
Right.
here's the last part, and this is the most important. After
Hmm.
you're done, you've written your story down, you analyze it, you take it in, then ask yourself, now, what part of the story am I actually in? Now, the reason you ask yourself that finally is this. I don't care if you're talking about a storybook or you're talking about a movie. I'm a movie guy. I love movies.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
especially love a good superhero movie. Give me a
Yeah.
good Batman movie, good
Nice.
Superman movie, we're good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Here's the deal when you watch movies like that. Any good action movie, there's going to be failure or turmoil or heartbreak early in the movie. And
Yes.
then at some point, something shifts, something
Yes.
changes,
Yes.
and good emerges out of the bad. A
Yes.
triumph emerges out of the heartbreak, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, what you need to understand is if you write down your storyline and it seems like it's only been bad, hooray. Because if you were to refocus this moment where you've decided to start doing the work to identify the problems, to identify your needs, now you can begin to be excited that you're walking into the happy ending you've been waiting for. And when I
Mm.
say happy ending, I don't mean this just the last chapter. I mean the last half of the book that is filled with joy, promise, potential. I'm living it. I'm the example. My life is not perfect, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
good days and bad days.
Uh-huh.
But the reality is, when I talk about my life, everything I talk about at the beginning of my life looked like tragedy and
Right.
felt like tragedy.
Right.
When I walk into the next room where my wife and my kids are sitting down right now, that is my happy ending. When I
Mm.
sit in this conversation
Yes.
with you and I
Yes.
feel like what I have to say matters,
Yeah.
I know I'm in my happy ending. And so it's important to know, you have to know the season of your life you're in, or the chapter of your story that you're
Right.
in. It's
Right.
not really the ending because you're still here. So if
Right.
it's not all the way at the ending, you can make it count. This is the big shift. This is the
Yes.
big change. And
Yes.
I think that that's the most incredible thing. Write it down, make it plain, and then understand that it's not over.
Got it. And the beauty behind that is we have the power and the ability within ourselves to make that change.
Mm,
That is that is it's brilliant. I mean, because, things outside of our ability to change or
mhm,
beyond our control, why worry about those or think about those? But all the things that you mentioned, as far as writing down those stories, writing down those sub stories, those events, the good and the bad, we have the power to do that. We have the power to read over them. We have the power to interpret them any way we want. And with the proper guidance, we have the power to shift our mind into realizing, okay, if all these are bad, guess what? We are in the direction moving towards our happy ending where, we continue to live what we were truly meant to to live for.
And I'll add this in. The reason you're moving in the right direction is because you're taking the time to examine it.
Yes.
If you never examine it, you're just going to stay in the same direction.
Yes.
When you start analyzing things, so there's probably somebody listening to that. They're saying, listen, Maurice, like, I have goals and I have dreams and I have hopes and all that. But if I look backwards for too long, it'll keep me from my forward trajectory. Well, I agree with that. It's not that you're supposed to stare backwards forever. It's that you're supposed to realize that the things from behind me that I don't heal from hinder me in the future. So I deal with it in the past. I deal with how it hurt me, how it affected me, how maybe it's still limiting me.
Yeah.
And then one day at a time, I go after the new life. It's one decision at a time. It's one choice at a time. It's
Right.
kind of what you talked about. It's one conversation at a time after you figure out what it is you need to overcome.
Right. No, for sure. And I've heard I can't remember this gentleman's name, but he's a motivational speaker, and I really need to make the effort to follow this gentleman. But I've heard him in an interview, a discussion, talking about the past,
Mhm.
and these words just resonated with me. He says, the past is for reference, not residence.
That's
And
good.
so I thought, man, that is gold. That's
Mm,
money, and it's
mhm,
real, And
mhm,
so that's what rang through me as you were saying this, and it also reminded me of there's an entry in your blog where you're talking about when you were a guest on the podcast Faith on the Journey,
mhm,
and you talk about the two very toxic elements of guilt and shame, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
then you also talk about the three possible interactions or choices we have in how we deal with our past.
mhm,
And I think you touched on one or two of those, but I just found that uh, that entry just compelling, very
mm,
compelling as far as what we as humans have the power in how we interpret our past, and then of course that, as you said earlier, impacts the direction you're going.
mhm. Well, the funny thing is, think of the same scripture I already referenced, Psalm 23.
Yeah.
At the end of it, what it says is, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Now, think about how when we live life, maybe you've made some mistakes, you've done some foul things, you've screwed some things up in life. Well, guilt and shame has a tendency to haunt you, to
Yeah.
follow you.
Right.
And so sometimes this all goes to perception. Perception is reality. I've always loved that name,
Yeah.
or that phrase,
Hmm.
because perception can be changed.
Hmm.
And so anytime I hear footsteps behind me, if the footsteps are a reminder of everything that I got wrong, of everything that has hurt me, of everything that has broken me, then I will always be afraid of my past. Then I'll begin to project my past into the future and be
Right.
anxious about the life I'm living. If
Perpetually.
I perpetually, right?
Yeah.
I'm always afraid. I'm
Yeah.
always just, but if I realize that goodness and mercy is following,
Hmm.
then what that means is that I am not limited to who I've been or where I've been or how
Right.
I've been.
Right.
And now I can look to the future and I can say, because of what I've been through, I can have joy. I
Yeah.
can have peace. I can have
Yes.
positive reflection that shapes my new direction of my life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the key, is to not let, I say this to clients all the time. Name two things for me that guilt and shame can do for you that are positive. Now,
Mm.
sometimes people say things like, well, it'll keep me from making the same mistake. Well, no, wisdom will do that.
Right. That's
wisdom
right.
wisdom will keep you from making the same bad mistake.
Yeah.
All that guilt and shame does is pull you down. And so I think that life is about saying, listen, and you said it, in my worst moment, I had value. I was worth it. At my worst moment, at my
Yeah.
darkest moment, whether I knew it, whether they knew it, whether
Yeah.
people talked about me, hated on me, I
Yeah.
was valuable.
Right.
And this moment now is just about me being blessed enough and lucky enough to get to see it
Yeah.
and walk it out. That's all that is.
Got it. Got it, man. And like you said, you have to make that choice.
Mm,
You have to realize, okay, I am in control I can't interpret my past any way I wish. Let me interpret it in such a way that I can move forward in a productive, transformative way that is better than the road that I've gone so far. These bad things happen. Sure, I'm built up from that.
Yep.
Now let's use that as leverage to uh, propel right
Hmm.
forward for sure.
That's it.
And it comes to making that decision, right?
Hmm.
But there are people who are close to making that decision where they want to make that change. They have that revelation. They want to transform, but there's that three-letter word, BUT. And I'd love it if you can break it down, just give a synopsis on your second book, Your Butt is Too Big, and the essence and meaning behind that in someone pursuing their dreams.
Yeah, honestly, we've been talking about it the whole conversation. So
Mm,
if people have been resonating with the conversation, they're
yeah,
already there. It's the premise that the things that you haven't dealt with from your past
right,
and the things you haven't healed from, they create these limitations in your mind. And
right.
you find yourself saying, well, I mean, I would go after this dream, but you got to understand, I would work on this marriage, but it's probably too late because well, I mean, yeah, I would love to have sobriety. I would love to have health. I would love, but she should probably know about me that. And so what happens is we allow everything from our past to stand in the way of our destiny.
Mm,
So the key is, what did you say you wanted before you said but? What did you say that you desired? Was it the health? Was it the happiness? Was it the peace? Was it the spiritual? What was it you really wanted?
yeah,
Once you identify that, you're going to have to now do the painstaking work, one day at a time, of growing past those things that are standing in front of your blessings.
yes,
And here's what people need to know. I did not write a book, and I do not teach do these three things and your life will change, or
yeah,
spin
yeah,
around in a circle. And
yeah, yeah,
it's more, healing takes time,
yes,
growth takes time. And
right,
so when you say a person is there at the precipice of wanting to change,
yeah,
but
yeah,
what I tell them is, you only have to decide you want it now. And then tomorrow, when tomorrow comes, tomorrow will be now again.
yes, it will.
And when tomorrow comes, you'll have to decide now that you want it again.
Yes,
And any time that it's now, you'll have to decide that you want the healing, that you want the forgiveness, that you want the happiness, that you want the good marriage, that you
yeah,
want the better feeling about your life, that you want to be
yes,
fulfilled on the
yes,
inside. You'll
yes,
have to keep deciding and keep choosing. It's not a one-time deal. It's not one moment.
right,
It's, I said I want it, and I will
yes,
keep doing the daily tasks it takes to move
yes.
slowly in that direction.
Wow, you know what? That again makes all kinds of sense. One day at a time is the way to take it. Okay. The thing that kind of makes me a little skittish about it, but it's just something we have to power through, is
Mhm.
the simple fact that hey, it's reality. Okay, we
Yes.
have up days, we have down days.
Yes.
Okay, we have ebbs and flows, we have good moods, bad moods. We
Mhm.
have some days we just don't feel like opening the curtains and getting out of bed, right?
Mhm.
And you're saying, Maurice, even on those days, that can be now. And if it's
That's it.
now, you have to ask yourself again, do I want this? This is what I want. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and so when people read my book, one of
Hmm.
the things that people are always surprised about is how much of my life journey I really did share, and I told
Yeah.
some very deep stories.
Mm.
And one thing that I say in the book is, at some point you're going to lose yourself, and it could be for a couple hours, it could be for a couple days, it could be
Yeah.
for a couple weeks.
Right. Right.
And we generally have, and let me explain why you lose it. If you've been broken for most of your life, and then you
Hmm.
all of a sudden get this charge of I want to change, the brokenness you're leaving is more familiar than the change.
Yes.
Right. So
100%. Absolutely.
you're used to being depressed, you're used to
Yes.
being anxious,
Right.
so you may actually go a period of time, not catch you went back there. And the key is not, oh my gosh, I lost it. I guess I wasn't meant to have it. The
Hmm.
key is to say, I've identified I've slipped. I will forgive myself that I fell off.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then I will realize that now is a time that I can decide that I
Yes.
want to change. So
Yes.
it's not about perfection. It's not about getting it right all the time. It's about when you notice you've been getting it wrong, forgiving yourself, becoming present, being thankful that you even noticed that you fell off,
Yep.
and then choosing a different direction on that day.
Mm. Giving yourself grace and progress, not perfection.
That's it. Letting
Got
letting
it.
the letting the process perfect you
Yes.
instead of chasing perfection.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I completely agree with that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man. Maurice, I could talk to you all night, man, about just all the elements that are involved when it comes to transformation,
Mhm.
having that introspective uh, look at ourselves, but first having the self awareness to and desire to take that look, and of course accountability, taking ownership. You know, we've all screwed up. None of us are perfect. We made some bad mistakes, and then moving forward, you speak with purpose, you speak with intentionality, and it sounds like with the people that you work with, you help guide them in the direction of purpose and intention,
Absolutely.
as well. Maurice, how can the listeners follow you, subscribe to your podcast, pick up a copy of your book, and learn more about the great work you're doing?
Great question. So the easiest way to find me, I'm on all social media at Maurice F. Martin. You can go to my website, which is yourbuttis2big.com. Again, that's one T, yourbuttis2big.com. I've got a free ebook on there. You can sign up for a free 30-minute consultation with me. I've
Mhm.
got a new course that's coming out on there. So I've got a bunch of things. And of course, you can purchase my book there as well. And so one thing that I often tell people is, I'm not a self help guy, right? And
Right.
so oftentimes when people hear personal development conversations, they assume everybody believes in self help. I don't. I think that you need help from someone. If it's
Yes.
not me, fine, but don't try to do it alone. Make sure that you incorporate your loved ones. Go find a therapist. Go get a grief counselor. Keep listening to this podcast. Come find my podcast. My podcast is called Hope Rising. And if you go to that podcast, it's found wherever you can find podcasts. I bring on some great individuals and have very similar conversations to this one. And we talk about the journey of going from hopeless to hope, from faithless to faith. And so I would love to hear from the listeners and to hear your takes, your perspectives. And so, yeah, Maurice F. Martin, I'd love to talk to you.
Your but one T is too big.com.
Mhm.
And Hope Rising, ladies and gentlemen, listen to that podcast, subscribe to it, download some episodes, and hear some amazing stories of transformation, and conversations that Maurice has with his guests. Highly recommend you do that. We'll have notes and links and web addresses, social handles. We'll have all that in the episode show notes so that our listeners can be clicking on those links, purchasing that book, reading about just the great work you're doing, maybe even setting up that 30-minute free consultation while listening to this conversation. And again, for the listeners, look, I want to let you know, and everyone knows who listens to this show, okay, the road to rediscovery, we reflect on our life lessons, but we don't just reflect for our own growth as we move forward. We want to lift people up with us. We want to help others who are struggling. And I bring on very, very extraordinary guests who have those stories. And Maurice has given for free, okay, just tapped and scraped the very top of the iceberg on some very, very helpful tools, okay, in helping you kind of process and get through that that adversity or that struggle, or at least, ways of looking at yourself and the stories that you have told yourself, the events that you have endured, the good and the bad. He's given some very valuable information. And again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I highly encourage you to check out his website as well as his book to learn more incredible tools and anecdotes for transformation, to realize your true potential and to put you in the right direction to pursue your dreams. Maurice F. Martin, man, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. I want us to stay in touch. Okay. Come back on with the release of your next book. Any major changes or major events that you're having in the event or in the spirit of uplifting others and helping people, I'm more than happy to share with my listeners on here as well, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you do. These conversations are necessary, and just, thank you for standing in that gap and making a difference.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. It's a pleasure and an honor to do this for the guests, for the listeners, for everyone. And I want to thank you for tuning in and listening. And hey, look, if you have a friend, a loved one, a neighbor, coworker, colleague, someone who just doesn't seem to be themselves, maybe they're going through dark days of despair, have nowhere to turn or no one to turn to, I humbly ask that you please share this show with them, because on the road to rediscovery, we want our listeners to know two things. Number one, you're not alone. And two, there's always hope. HOPE, hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life. And it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.